Before the pandemic, engagement and well-being were rising globally for nearly a decade, but now they're stagnant. Living for the weekend, watching the clock tick, work is just a paycheck. These are the mantras of a lot of employees. And today on the Champion Forum podcast, we talk about how to bring passionate performance back to the workplace. Lee Colan is the president of the L Group consulting firm. He's an expert leadership advisor who's built a 25-year track record of successfully managing the challenges of rapid organizational change. Many companies have experienced the positive impact of Lee's practical approach, including FedEx, the American Heart Association, Walmart, and Texas Instruments. Lee's authored 10 rapid read books, including the bestseller, Sticking to It, The Art of Adherence, which illuminates how the highest achieving people and teams sharpen their focus, build their competence, and ignite their passion. Lee, it is an absolute honor to have you on the show. Welcome to the Champion Forum podcast.
Awesome. Pleasure to be here, Jeff. Really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you. Thanks so much.
Well, you and I got to catch up a little bit before we hit the record button, but for the sake of the listener, I got to tell you this. I interview a lot of people, but this one is very meaningful to me because Lee's work has had a direct impact on my leadership career and my leadership impact. And to tell a little bit of the story to the listener, I was about a year into my leadership tenure, hard-charging new leader, thought I had it all figured out. I was a great individual contributor and just made the assumption, Lee, that everybody did it like I was going to do it. And I learned really quickly that they didn't. And I started getting a bad brand around me. And I had a great leader. Her name was Karen. She kind of caught wind of this brand, a reputation that was being built. And we were at a corporate meeting once, and she handed me your book, Passionate Performance. And she said, if you read this book and you do what it says to do, not only will you become a better leader, but you'll make bigger impact. And so I've read this book no less than 50 times, of which 40 of it was probably in the first year of getting it. And since that time, I've given it to literally thousands of leaders, and it's changed my life. So Lee, I want to publicly say thank you for your work. You're making big impact.
Well, thank you for your support and your encouragement, Jeff. I appreciate that. Listen, you can see it's a little thin book. Get it done real quick. And I always tell people maybe the best thing about it is that it comes with a guarantee. If you put it by your nightstand in 1 hour, you're either done or you're asleep, right? So you can get through it, but we hope that it kind of has some actionable things. And like any book or anything, it's great that the book has some useful, actionable content, but it's really about the reader, right? You're going to make something happen with it. And so well done for you for turning it into real action and some impact. That's our goal. That's an honor for me to be here to kind of hear that those stories are wonderful. That's why we do what we do. A lot of our books come from our consulting work with clients. So we'll develop a model. We'll try to help address an issue. In this case, it was engagement. It could be coaching. It could be execution. It could be attitude. It could be your culture. But we try to develop a solution, put it in place, and I'm a pretty simple-minded guy, so it's like we try to boil it down to something really simple. And then if it starts working, we do it with another client, and then we realize, you know what? We really view our business as much as a personal calling, so we want to be able to get that useful tool or model or framework out to the rest of the world if we can. So in those cases where, like in Passionate Performance, we developed that model, we've applied it, we want to be able to codify that solution. So we codify it in the form of a book like that. So appreciate you.
Well, and I do like the easy to digest, quick reads because I mean, look, every tool has its purpose, but I tell leaders all the time, there's a difference between knowing something and executing on it.
Yeah.
And what I love about the book and many of your quick read books is you can digest them and go to work on the principles pretty quick. And it's in this book that I learned the difference between engaging the heart and engaging the mind of people.
Yeah.
And I mean, those that are new to leadership or maybe even tenured, sometimes we think like we're just here to manage results and make sure people don't break the rules. But there is something about this passionate performance that it's putting the people first and the people take care of the business. Sure. And what brought you to my mind, Lee, was I'm now in consulting. I've left the corporate world and I'm out there helping solve some of the biggest challenges like you do as well. And one of those is just that, it's engagement or lack of engagement.
Yeah.
And Lee, you probably follow the stats like I do. And Gallup, they recently informed us that only 21% of employees are engaged at work. And most would say that they don't find their work even meaningful at this point.
Yeah.
They don't think their lives are going well, or they don't feel very hopeful about the future. And business leaders right now are facing real challenges as it relates to employee engagement. Why is this? What are you seeing out there? Are you seeing the same things? I'm sure that you are, but why does it seem like this is cresting for business leaders at this moment?
Well, listen, this model is 20 years old. We feel it's as relevant as it was back then, and for this reason, to address your question. I think when people went remote, managers are like, well, yeah, I'll pick up the phone, I'll call them more. But at its core, most managers and leaders kept their same leadership style. Mm-hmm. And you can't engage people the same way if they're not with you, right? You have to kind of get a little more creative, pull them in. And so I think that's really been the gap that we've seen. So even now, most companies are kind of swinging the pendulum back to some type of hybrid, 2-3 days back in, 1 day, whatever it might be. But as a leader, like it's one thing if I could just walk down the hall and see you and hey, Jeff, how's it going? What do you need help with? What are you struggling with? You're there. It's very easy. You have those kind of incidental interactions. And when you're remote, everything has to be very planful. And so it's really making sure that those communications are being deliberate and purposeful to meet some of these needs, and particularly the emotional needs. For the listener, the passion performance model has 6 human needs: 3 intellectual needs to engage the mind, the needs for achievement, autonomy, and mastery. But even very relevant today, they're all the same, but really the gap today is on those emotional needs to engage the heart, the needs for purpose, intimacy, and appreciation. Intimacy, you could use the same words like connection, right? Mm-hmm. But you can imagine now if I'm going in just a couple of days a week, like maybe even my sense of purpose, and that's a big deal we've noticed too, is like the today's worker, their need for purpose. Like, it's not so much about, am I satisfied on the job? Is it feeling purposeful at 2 levels, Jeff? Is my job purposeful? Like, so as a leader, I would say, no matter how high a level person, some MBA from Harvard you're managing, it's your job to build a bridge between their daily tasks and some brighter tomorrow. What's the why, right? What's their purpose? But also today's workers looking for organizational purpose, not just job purpose. How are we as an organization making the world a better place, improving the human condition? And so if you're not, even as an organization, the CEO and executive team need to think about, all right, how do we make sure we're like showing that we're a purposeful organization? You can't just say, oh, we do these, we contribute to a not-for-profit. I mean, those are easy fixes. It's really making that connection for people. So that sense of purpose, and then that intimacy, that connectedness is really, I think that's probably the main one why those scores are kind of leveling off, not doing so great right now from an engagement standpoint. Because I'm here, I got a Zoom call, and I'm so zoomed out. I'm like, even when I'm on Zoom with 10 people, I'm like, oh, so it's really making sure. I'm kind of an old school guy. I'll tell our leaders, like, pick up the phone, forget about the Zoom, just pick up the phone. We used to do a really good job of connecting people just on the phone, right? Yeah. Just pick up the phone and call them, and you don't always have to have a business reason. Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Like, what's going on? Tell me what's happening. We always tell our leaders that you have to be able to see the human behind the employee. Yeah. And I think the old out of sight, out of mind thing kind of actually comes into fruit, comes down to play here. So we need to make sure, okay, they're out of sight. How do I make sure I'm staying connected? What's going on with their family? They have a mother-in-law living with them that's sick right now. Are they having to homeschool? What are they juggling? So we need to make sure that we're kind of connected in that way. And people want to know that my leader's got my back, right? He or she really cares for me as a human being. And so I think we're a long answer, but I think that connectedness, that purpose, and that connectedness and intimacy is really what's missing now.
Yeah. And the only constant has been change over the last 24 months. And I think the companies that were doing what you just said coming into the chaos did better, but I think everybody was affected. And so you have people that were they kind of had this good model going in, and so they minimized damage. Yeah. But then comes phase 2, which is, am I changing with the landscape? Right. And I think that was kind of the, we got the jab, then we got the right hook. because it's like, okay, I think we're going to be okay. But then came the right hook, which was things are changing fast and we're not keeping up.
Yeah.
And you have an amazing track record of helping companies manage rapid organizational change. It's one of your brand hallmarks. And in your experience, how have the events over the last few years, how have they created the need for more rapid organizational change? And what advice are you giving companies to kind of navigate the choppy water?
Sure. And so if you look at the Gallup, I know you've cited Gallup surveys before, but like, I think 2016, 2017, Gallup did an expansive global research around the shifting needs of today's worker. And then, like any good crisis, all COVID did was accelerate an existing trend, right? So people think, oh, it's like this because of COVID. It's not. These trends are well documented that people are looking for a sense of purpose more. They don't want a boss, they want a coach, right? They don't really want to focus on their weaknesses like typical performance appraisals do. They want to focus on their strengths. Help me kind of flourish within my most gifted areas. They're not focused so much on work-life balance like in the old days. They're like, it's just life now, right? You can see what's going on in my house, my kids running behind me. It's just life. So there are clear trends or illuminated that COVID just said, okay, we're going to take those. They were on a path like this, but we just went like that, right? That's what COVID did for them. So, and that's what kind of caught, that was that second punch you were talking about that caught people like, oh my gosh, like these things are real. It's not just like, oh, it looked like they're real, they're staying around. And if you look at demographics, it tells us that the supply and demand in the labor market of not having enough employees isn't going to go away anytime soon. It's not just a blip. So, China, Japan have experienced that. We've got less people in the workforce. We've got people having less children. It's going to be even in the next generation. So as a leader, 10 years ago, what used to be a nice to have, like, if you're a leader, if you did this passionate performance stuff like you did, you really set yourself apart.
Yeah.
Today, it's just like table stakes, right?
Yeah.
You better do that stuff or else people are just going to go elsewhere.
If they don't it's an expectation.
If they don't see that engaging leadership, that sense of purpose, really feeling connected, really feeling appreciated, which was the third emotional need I didn't talk about yet. But if they're not feeling that, it's like, well, I got 10 other places I can go. So it's really what used to be, again, a nice to have from a leadership practice standpoint is now becoming kind of a competitive mandate.
Yeah, it's a standard.
So it's nice for guys like us, like in the business, it's a little easier to make the business case now. The numbers kind of tell the story. So again, there's no rocket science here. There's science behind it. We're big on the brain science and the human science about how our brains work, how people work, what the organizational dynamic is. But the science tells us that if we have these needs, they're basic human needs. If we can see those needs, identify those, and fulfill those, people perform at peak performance. That's what passionate performance is.
Yeah.
It's nothing more than getting discretionary effort from your team. People willingly giving their time and energy. You got to engage their mind and their heart. That's the holy grail for a leader.
Yeah.
I want people thinking about my projects and what they could do to help us out when they're driving to work in the morning or when they're walking the dog. That's discretionary effort. And I feel like when we talk about disengagement now, that's at the crux of it. Because when I'm starting to get disengaged, it's that period we call I quit, but I forgot to tell you. We're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to come in a little later. I'm tired. Or I'm going to cut off at 4 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock. Or, oh, they want me to volunteer for this project. I'm not going to do it. Or, and so it's that phase. It's very dangerous. So as we see these things, people starting to finger point, not taking accountability, absenteeism going up. Those are symptoms of disengagement. So as a leader, we can't just sweep those under the rug. You better acknowledge those and go, okay, that's kind of tough for me to see, but that tells me what's going on in the hearts and minds of my team. I need to kind of nip it in the bud.
Man, that's so good. You saying that, we know the great, the great turnover of 2021 and the great resignation of 2022, all this stuff happening, and, call after call, consulting meeting after consulting meeting, we hear about labor costs are so high. Sure. And to attract talent, we're paying more than we've ever paid. I have people that are leaving for more money, all of these things. I was in a workshop this morning that I was moderating, Lee, on performance management, feedback, expectations, accountability. And the one gentleman said, I'm hesitant to give feedback to our peak performers and hold them accountable because they might quit.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's flip the script here. Like, what if you don't hold them accountable and they stay?
Yeah.
What is that going to look like? Because I said, I'm going to argue, my debate is that your best recruiting tool is your engaged staff.
That's right.
And as leaders, we're going to attract who we are, not what we want.
Yeah.
And this passionate performance that you're talking about, Lee, I think it solves a magnitude of problems.
Sure.
I'm not here to say like we can't compete with salaries and so forth,
Right.
but we've heard the saying that people will stay for a leader.
Yes.
And I believe that to be absolutely true. And
And
they'll
they'll
stay
also
for
leave.
people that are making them better.
They'll also leave for the wrong leader, right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
So here we are. We have low employee engagement. We have high organizational change happening.
Yeah.
And this is a very challenging recipe for leaders to manage.
Sure.
You know, low engagement, lots of change.
Yeah.
What are the best companies and leaders doing to navigate this? And what is your advice? Is there a lever we can pull?
Yeah, there's a very simple solution. No, I'm just joking. It's not that simple, right? Yeah.
Take this pill and it all goes
right,
away.
Right. And listen, all of our clients, their salary line is at record levels. They're making salary increases to make sure that they're being competitive. But if you just play the salary game and say we just got to keep being the highest in the market, well, that's a tough game to win, right? So we said, listen, we tell our clients, be reasonably competitive on the salary side, but the glue to your business to attract, it's the magnet and the glue. It attracts people as a magnet, and it's the glue that keeps people there is the culture, right? It is your culture. And so again, we used to say this 10 years ago and they're like, oh, well, yeah, maybe not. Now they're like, okay, we realize that we're seeing a churn going out the door. We better create. And so that culture starts with your frontline leaders that know how to see the person behind the employee. They know how to meet these 6 needs that we've talked about, the 3 intellectual needs, the 3 emotional needs. And people feel like they're loved, right? And they're appreciated. And then we have that balance you alluded to. Okay, how do I make sure show people they're loved and appreciated, but also keep them accountable? We're running an enterprise here, right? It's not, it's not a not-for-profit in most cases that we work with. So how do we balance that? And even if you're a not-for-profit, we've got to keep people accountable. We're using external funds. We have to be good stewards of our donations. So there is that balance there. But I would tell you that if people know that they're loved and appreciated, they're much more open to being held accountable and growing. And I don't even like to call it necessarily accountability, because it's really about, I'm giving you feedback, Jeff, because I want you to be the best person you could be. Yeah. Not just the best employee and perform, but the best person.
Yeah.
I love a quote from Marcus Buckingham that wrote First Break All the Rules. He said, our job as leaders is not to put in what God left out, but it's to draw out what God put in.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really about seeing their natural gifts and helping them flourish in those areas. There'll be so loyalty if you do that. I don't know. I really feel like that's a big deal now, particularly because workers, again, data will tell us they don't want you focusing on their weaknesses, what they can fix, right? Focus on strengths. And I would say, even in the past, before that data came out, we would always tell our clients, find the naturally gifted areas and help people flourish in there. You're golden. If you say to me, Lee, one of your weaknesses is being disorganized, you could work with me all day long, and I'm probably never going to be the most organized guy on your team. I might get to a reasonably proficient level. So I'm not saying ignore people's weaknesses if it's getting in the way of doing their job. But the best return for your invested time is to identify what they're naturally gifted at. How can we help them develop that and help the organization grow and using those gifts? And I just think you find tremendous commitment, and you find just great benefit from doing that.
Well, and so much job satisfaction, right? Like get right people in the right seat. You know, when I make this point, I usually ask people, what is Warren Buffett second best at? Yeah. And nobody knows, and nobody cares, right? But we know what he's really good at. We want to keep Mr. Buffett in his lane. Yeah. And so many times we do try to put the square peg in the round hole because this is what our company needs. Right. And losing sight of where can they bring the most value. Right. And to your point, Lee, I think leaders, like, the pendulum does shift. You know, you have leaders that might be listening that says, that seems real fluffy to me. That's not really my style. I'm kind of a tough leader and I kind of lead with the iron fist. Well, suit yourself. I mean, that ship has sailed. Yeah. But then you have other leaders that they might be listening to you, Lee, and they're saying, so what Lee's saying is just be nice. And I think what we need to dive into, maybe, Lee, if you would, is that there is literally a science behind this, and there's things that we need to learn and understand so that we can do this well. And you talk about this in Passionate Performance, you talk about the difference between intellectual needs and emotional needs.
Yeah.
Can you explain the balance? How do we strike this balance? Because intellectual, you talk a lot about achievement and autonomy.
Yeah.
Emotional, you talk a lot. You mentioned intimacy and appreciation.
Yeah.
How do we check these boxes, and how does a leader take actionable steps to hit the intellectual and the emotional?
Sure. Good question. And so let me say, you said people might misinterpret and say you just need to be nice. Well, the truth is you do need to be nice, right? You need to be nice and respectful. You could be nice and still have tough conversations with people, right? So we have hearts and minds, they're completely balanced, right? So if we just focus on just the intellectual needs of achievement, autonomy, mastery, drive, all we're doing is creating a sweatshop, right? We're not going to be able to sustain that kind of performance over time. But the intellectual side gets you the performance, right? That's where the performance comes from in passionate performance. The emotional side gets you the passion, right? The needs for a purpose, intimacy, and appreciation, right? But if we just focus on that side, that's just kind of a party, right? So that's nice, right? We need both of them. The heart and the mind need to go hand in hand. So the key is, as a leader, it's not a one size fits all. It's like, okay, I'm looking at Jeff and like what's important to him. So I remember one of my daughters was in kindergarten one time, and she came home crying because the teacher made her come sit up in the front of the room and sit in her chair. She thought that was like really embarrassing. Well, we talked to the teacher about it. That was a form of recognition. Right? Huh. So the teacher was like, well, I was bringing her up there because she did a great job. Same thing here. It's like when you appreciate someone, we're not saying, okay, here's my rubber stamp. That's why you have to see the human behind the employee and understand how do I help them meet that need. On the need for mastery and coaching, someone you might be really advanced in that regard, and you just need to kind of get out of the way and give them the resources. Or maybe you have a new person on your team that really needs your coaching guidance along the way. So these are not like, out there needs. These are basic human needs. But if you love your people, we always say the best leaders really love their people. And just like when we love our kids, doesn't mean I like what they're doing all the time, right? And so you don't have to agree with everything they're doing, but they have to show that you have a real vested interest in their success and are willing to do the right things for them. So whether it's any of these needs, there's not rocket science. So appreciate the need for achievement, right? I need to provide the right resources, right? I need to kind of get out of the way, right? On an autonomy, I need to provide some kind of reasonable boundaries, right? And some expectations. And so there's real simple stuff, as you know, in the book. And I think that's what resonates with the book, is that it's like, okay, I could do this, right? It's so simple. And I think many times, go back to Warren Buffett. He has a quote, I'll probably butcher, but he has a quote that says, as human beings, we have this perverse desire to make the simple complex, right? And so we're just trying to make the simple and keep it simple. And even though we've got all this swirl of pandemic and all these things going on around us, human beings and the basic human needs haven't really changed, right? Now things shift now, I get that, but in terms of really trying to connect with people and help them lead and inspire them, it hasn't changed over the years. It's just our people's minds and hearts as the leader, are they open to that, going, you know what, I need to do something a little bit differently now. Mm-hmm. And it isn't easy. I get that, because we have a lot of leaders that are at retirement age that are like, you know what, this is going to take a whole new skill set for me to kind of to train myself. I'm not up for it. In fact, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we've had 10 heads of school districts resign in the past year.
Can you blame them?
I'm done. Like they know it's a new ball game, right? And so, but for those that are up for it, that really want to make a difference, I think it's a really meaningful form of leadership to really invest yourself in your people and help them not only become better employees, but better people. And boy, what deep connections you get from that. I'm sure you could recall plenty of folks back at Cintas that are still thinking about you. You probably have a boatload of thank you notes and stuff. And how more rewarding is that? That's what leadership's about. That's the big payoff for a leader.
It's my fuel. Like, love Cintas, but I needed more. And so much so that I quit my amazing job because I am passionate about it. It's like, what else is there as a leader? Which, by the way, leader, if you're listening, I mean, really, at the end of the day, our job is to help other people reach their fullest potential. You know, the sign right behind me, lead, inspire, and win. And, you know, this intellectual side, it hit me so hard when I first started learning this piece of it, because I was always emotionally driven, because I grew up in humble beginnings. And so this appreciation and sense of purpose and hitting the milestones always meant something to me, that warm and fuzzy.
Sure.
But it wasn't until I learned this intellectual side, because sometimes as leaders, we just kind of assume people do it like we do it.
Yeah.
But the mastery thing is what hit me the most.
Okay.
And this intellectual piece to me, Lee, is sometimes spelled TIME. It's like, I'm going to sit in that room and role play with you until you know how to trial close and see the script. And when you make people better, because I mean, you're seeing it, Lee, I'm sure, where people are saying, we can't keep up with labor. Somebody left for $1 an hour. They quit a job.
Yeah, that's right.
They quit a job is what they did.
Yeah.
And if they feel like they can go over here and do the same job for $1 more an hour, why wouldn't they?
Why not? Right.
And making money and building wealth, they're miles apart. And when you give somebody a gift of mastery, it changes the game. And so don't just cattle herd people into the training room and check the box and have everybody sign off. Like, go for the mastery. And I will tell you what I took out of that. I applied it, and it was painful. Like, it was conference room after hours, role plays, and till I wanted to throw up and all this stuff. But to your point, people that are calling me, I'm still getting wedding invitations. And I mean, for goodness sake, I've had people name their kids after me, and I don't say that in an arrogant way, but it's like, wow,
that's
like,
awesome.
Just because I taught you how to do a sales script, this is awesome.
Well, that's meaningful. I mean, if you look at the data, it'll tell us that if you look at all the aspects of satisfaction, of of kind of financial fulfillment and relational and all that, all the other aspects, physical, but your career well-being, all aspects of well-being, your career well-being is by far the biggest predictor of overall well-being. So if I'm doing great at work and I've got someone helping me feel good about myself and succeed at work and master something, that bleeds into the rest of my life, for better or for worse, right? But in this case, in your case, it was good, right? That affects their life. So you're not just helping them do their job, you're actually improving the well-being of their whole life. That's very meaningful, right?
Yeah. And it's something I think people can be proud of.
Yeah.
Like, they can be proud of the work that they're doing. And Lee, you've probably heard this story about the 3 guys that were digging a ditch, and the one guy goes along, "What are you doing? I'm miserable. Get out of my way." But they get to the 3rd guy, and the guy says, "I've been given an opportunity to dig a ditch. It's going to run utilities, and we're building a beautiful church up there." That guy had purpose, right?
Yeah.
How do leaders get there, Lee? Well, I mean, it's probably more than just printing off the certificate that you did a good job. Like, how do we really tie this piece in?
Yeah, I would say leaders are bridge builders. We have to build a bridge between today's tasks and toils and some brighter tomorrow. So I think what happens is we kind of just get busy, and maybe sometimes we get lazy about it. But the fact is, no matter what level of the job, frontline accounts payable clerk, all the way up to a senior executive, we have to make sure that people understand the connection between what they're doing and how it's going to make a difference for our customers, our organization. I don't care if you're in an IT call center taking help desk tickets, right? How's that helping our people be more productive, ultimately maybe have more time with their family, whatever it might be. So we need to think about that as a leader. We can't just assume they're here for the paycheck. And the data will tell us people are not here for the paycheck anymore. They're here for purpose. So we have to build that bridge between whatever they're doing today and say, okay, let's talk about that. Maybe you're really removed from the customer, but let's talk about and show you kind of the ripple effect about what you do and how it ends up affecting our customer. So if you're an accounts receivable, okay, let's talk about that. The quicker you can help get this cash in for the business, that gives us cash flow. That enables us to invest not only your job security, but invest in opportunities for you and new things and new technologies. So helping them see that, I just think it's not hard to do, honestly, but it's just, we get caught up in the day-to-day. And I think we're assumptive about, well, I'm paying them good. I'm giving them a good job. And I would just say, paychecks out the door. You're going to assume you'll be reasonably competitive. People are not working for a paycheck now. We see plenty of young 20 to 35-year-old people saying, you know what, I'm just taking 6 months off. I don't really care. I don't need the money. I'm not, and so, and again, if you can't help them make that connection to something bigger than themselves that's meaningful to them, they're just going to find a place that can. So I
Yeah.
really think it's just, I don't think it's a hard task, Jeff. I think it's just being patient, and the quicker you could do it when they start on board and spend the time to draw that connection, I think that's going to serve you very well.
I think a great thing to do too for leaders is to ask your people what that looks like.
Well, there you go.
They have the answers. And look, you got to filter the nonsense. Somebody's going to want pony rides on Friday. I get it.
Right.
But, you got to filter some of that out. But your people will tell you, what that looks like. And you're right. Like now more than ever, like if there ever was a time that it's like, I can't believe that just happened. So why'd they quit? Well, they said they wanted to go braid hair and sell, seashells down by the seashore, and they're out. And they're like, what? Like things are happening. Like we can't really put our mind around.
Yeah.
But look, you have people that are sitting back and they're just saying, well, they're just crazy. Who would ever do that? Well, a lot of people is what we're seeing are doing things like that. It doesn't, we can sit here as leaders and make excuses like, who can believe this is ever happening?
Yeah.
But now more than ever, we are literally in combat with a very diverse workforce. We have the aging workforce. We have the young workforce. We have political differences, moral differences, social unrest. Lee, how are leaders to navigate this, and how do they find this common ground? Because you got the older generation saying, well, they just quit and they're just hanging out at the beach. Who in their right mind does that? Well, a lot of people apparently. Yeah. Like how are you telling leaders to navigate this challenge?
I try to caution them about painting any generation with a broad brush, because I think the baby boomers now are kind of toward the end of their career, many of them retiring, and I'm sure when they were coming in, whatever the generation was called before them was thinking, I can't believe these stupid baby boomers. You know what I mean?
So, right.
There's a great quote from Socrates that from 2,000 years ago that sounds like it could be said today. This next generation doesn't have the right values. They don't work hard. They don't respect people. Like it was said 2,000 years ago. So to me, it's like let's get out of the complaining zone and find kind of common ground and not paint people with a broad brush. So I think it's important that back to understanding the person, right? And creating an environment, even if someone has a different maybe set of values or work ethic, how do we create an environment to get the best out of them, right? Yeah. So it's not about, everyone has to perform at the same level if you're a leader. My goal as a leader is just to get everyone to perform at their potential. Jeff, your potential might be much higher than this person's potential, but as a leader, I could be successful if I got both of you to your potential. That's our job. And I'm editorializing here a little bit. I'm not a big fan of just organizations taking political stances and all that. It's like, I think you need to kind of let people be who they are at work, say what they need to say. But I think we're in a world where a lot of organizations, if they don't take a stance, they really can get marginalized. So they have to take a stance. Then if they take a stance the other way, then they get it's really tricky business. But
it really is.
For leaders, we just need to love our people. I don't care what they believe, just like your kids. I don't care what they believe or what they do. It doesn't matter. But my job is to make sure I see the person behind the employee and help you be the best person you could be on the job. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. All the other stuff's nonsense. You want to talk about that offline, that's fine, but that should not get in the way of your love for them. And again, we talk about love in our new book a lot, but there's Marcus Buckingham, by the way, from Perfect All the Rules, just wrote a book about love and work, right? And so I think we're seeing that we used to think, oh, love kind of doesn't really belong in the workplace. Well, love is really nothing more than doing what's in the best interest of others. Right? Yeah. To me, that's the essence of servant leadership. And so if I'm really going to serve my people and help them be successful, I have to fundamentally love them.
And we do, I think, get caught up in that, because I just did a show on this recently, Lee. I don't even think it's out yet, but I was talking about stop using the pandemic and all the other things as an excuse, and don't waste a crisis. Don't waste a crisis. This is your time to shine. Right. But I do see this, because there is so much tension everywhere right now. But here's the thing. It's like young, old, Democrat, Republican, regardless of the color of your skin, here's what we know. Intellectual and emotional need applies to everybody. It applies to everybody.
Cultures, industries, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's about human beings.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So I want, if you don't mind, Lee, I'd love to ask, as we come to a close here, I'd love to ask a little bit about your journey.
Sure.
So we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen into this show. We have a lot of corporate executives too, but we have a lot of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. In 1999, you and your wife said, "This is our calling. This is what we're going to do."
Yeah.
How did you know that this was the right thing to do? You have built a life serving other people, building companies, helping leaders thrive. How did you know in 1999 this was the way that you needed to go?
Well, I've been in the corporate world. I've been in consulting jobs for a little bit. I'd always known I wanted to go out on my own. I didn't really know the purpose, my personal why. But as part of that process, before we launched out, I just did some self-assessments and kind of just asked the question at that point in my life, who am I? Right. And so for me, it boiled down to like, I'm just a servant. I love to help people. Right. And that sounds kind of, soft, but I was like, I just want to use, it didn't mean I needed to go out into the mission fields, but I just want to use the gifts and the training and the education that, thank God, my parents afforded me. And how can I use that to best serve other people and help them? So when we kind of launched out, we kind of viewed our business as a really kind of a ministry to help others and learn and grow. We just, our deal is we like to equip them with tools and encourage them to succeed. And so it was really just through a lot of self-reflection, honestly. So I think it's important to make sure you know who you are before you just start your own business. Now, oh, I got this great idea. Let's just go do it. Like, yeah, because your personality and your values and your beliefs are going to kind of bleed throughout the whole business, throughout your whole organization. And so if you don't have that sense of clarity, in fact, we work with a lot of executives now, 25-year execs. I'll ask them, what are your 3 leadership values? And they'll go, oh, they've got to think about it. I'm like, dude, like in 25, you should know, boom, boom, boom. Like, early on, I was fair, focused, and fun, like these 3 F's. And people knew because I was fair, focused, and fun, what they could expect from me and what I expected from them. And so it's that same thing, even as you're starting your own business, having that self-reflection and really understanding who you are, what you want to do with your life is really important. And my wife and I, we really wanted a business that we could build to make sure that we could build around our family, to make sure we weren't missing those early years with our kids. We wanted some flexibility. We wanted to make sure we were staying in our sweet spot. What are we naturally gifted at? And so I think thinking about all those things, a lot of people jump to the business plan without thinking about who I am and how's that going to be reflected out into the world and into my other people I'm dealing with. And we spent a lot of time on that. So that's kind of how we got a clarity to kind of move forward and say, this is what we're all about. We're leadership advisors dedicated to healthy growth. And we want to dedicate our lives to that.
That's great feedback. I tell people all the time, just because you can make great apple pie doesn't mean you should start a pie company, right? It's not for everybody. What are the biggest things that you learned as you scaled your business? What are those pitfalls that maybe somebody starting in that journey can avoid?
Sure. One thing was I way overestimated 2 things. The difficulty of turning what I thought was really good relationships into paying clients, right? I was a likable guy. I had great relationships, been in a lot of areas. I try to help people out, but it's a different ball game. People, they'll all cheer you on. That sounds great, Lee. Good stuff. Getting them to pay for it's a different ball game. So I mean, don't just assume I've got a great network. They're all gonna. Don't overestimate that. The other thing I overestimated is just the amount of time it takes to make something happen, right? And so you do a 5-year pro forma. And we think, oh, we're going to do that. And if you get there in 7 years, you're doing good, right? So just sometimes, at least that was our experience. I shouldn't say it, but I mean, you have to be patient. And I'm saying this, if you want to scale something, if you just want to knock it out and get it done, you could probably get it done in 5 years. But really scaling something requires kind of discipline and repetitiveness, and then ultimately systemization of something so that you don't have to think about it anymore. Then you layer something else on. Like, for example, our marketing, we would do one thing. We wouldn't jump to something else until we kind of had that down. We didn't have to think about it very much. Then we'd layer something else on. And we've had a lot of people come to us and go, here's our marketing plan. We've got 10 things we're going to do. And they haven't figured out any 10 of them yet. I was like, figure one out first, right? Get it going, get feedback, learn about it. And then you'll be more informed and better equipped to layer on a next one. So now we have multiple layers of marketing that occurs, and we don't have to think about it all that much. I mean, that's one example. You need to take that into your operational area, into your service delivery area, and it's the same kind of mentality. So just being patient and creating personal and organizational habits that
Yeah.
you layer on top of it. And that's why I think I at least tend to underestimate the amount of time it takes, because it's really about building kind of personal muscle and habits around these things. And that takes some time.
Where, I mean, I guess it's hard to pinpoint this, but how many years in was it that you were like, you know what, I think we have something here. I feel like we got a foundation under us. Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, well, we're 23 years in now, and hopefully we're getting to that point. But I would say, honestly, you're in it for a decade, and like we were, at least, it was like at some point, I don't know exactly where it is, but it's like you feel like you go through ups and downs, right? Through whether your business, you have a down business, or the economy goes down, and at some point you don't get nervous anymore, and it's like, you know what, we've been through this, we'll figure it out. We kind of, I don't know when it is, but just a few years ago, just a couple years ago, we kind of positioned the business and to kind of take everything we've done and say, here's kind of the platform of our business, and we feel really good about it now. But that's an iterative process. So we felt really good at things right when we started, and then at 5 years, we looked at those. It felt good about it at that point. And each time you hope you feel better and better. Now we feel the best it's ever been. Hopefully in 5 years, we'll even feel better. My point here is that your business is a living, breathing organism, right? Mm-hmm. You can't just kind of say, hey, we've got it now, we're set, we're just going to ride it out. It's just not like that, right? So I think the idea is always being willing to test things, try it out. I'm always really embarrassed when I reflect back on the first time I tried something, like you talked about, first time I spoke in public, one of your podcasts, you talked about first time you gave your podcast.
Oh my.
I love the fact when I look back and I just cringe going, oh my gosh, that was horrific. But you know what? Your biggest learnings in life is after trial number one, right? You got to try it and learn. And then you're way better trial number two. And then you're a little better in trial number three. And then you start, that's how you get to excellence over time. So I just think in any business, you just got to keep trying new things, double down on what's working. That we're going to systematize that. That's awesome. Try new things. If it didn't work, okay, we tried that. We'll try something else. So that's kind of, that's trying to how we grow, is just be willing to experiment. It's hard. Sometimes it costs money. Like we spend some money. It's like, ooh, that didn't work. That one hurt a little bit. That was a semester of my kid's college, right? It's like, oh, ouch, like that when you're starting, right? So
well, this gets back to why you better know who you are and that you're passionate about it, which is why most businesses fail in the first year, because it's where's all the money? Where's all the fanfare? And I thought everybody from, all my buddies were going to support my business, and they don't. And everybody from church is surely going to eat at the restaurant, and they don't. And surely they're going to pay me, and they don't. And it's getting through all of that. And I mean, look, that spoke to me for sure. Now you've done a lot of work. You've helped thousands, tens of thousands of companies and leaders on their journey. And I know this is probably a tough question, but what book or what workshop that you've put out there do you think has had the biggest impact?
You know what? It might be the one you're talking about, because it really helped shape Passion Performance, helped shape the way people not just led. You can put leadership, but it helped them shape how they viewed their employees. And to me, I always say you got to get your mind right before you can get your team right. So if that model helped leaders look at their employees differently, to see the human being behind the employee, I think that's really critical. So in the past, I would say it's Passion Performance. We've got a new book coming out called Healthy Leadership it addresses a lot of the similar things, but really buttressed on more of the very current research around what's going on in the business environment right now. So it's really about how to thrive in today's new world of work, and it brings a lot of science about how our brains work, and positivity, and how we can kind of minimize the negative and increase the positive, how we can demonstrate love to our workforce, how we continue to grow ourselves and our team. So I'm hoping this healthy leadership model has that same way. A lot of the tools, Jeff, are the same. It's really about the impact is if you can help people rethink how they view themselves, their role as a leader, and how they view the relationship with their team, that's really where you get a real multiplier effect. And that's really rewarding if we could see that, just like in your situation.
Yeah. And I was privileged enough to get a pre-copy of the book, and don't text me or email me. You're not getting it. You got to go order it. But I got one, and I started reading it. And the thing I was thinking about and I thought this the first time I read Passionate Performance as well, is this seems so simple. And I remember as a new leader thinking it's almost like, is the person writing, is Lee like Captain Obvious here? But here's what we learned fast is simple and easy are miles apart.
That's right.
Because it's a simple concept, not easy to always execute.
Right.
And this book, Healthy Leadership, I will tell you the timing of this release could not be better. I mean, a lot of economic turmoil. We're in an election year. What does that mean? And, people are trying to rebound. Interest rates are going up. Inflation keeps climbing. We got all this going on. And here comes Healthy Leadership, which I believe comes out September of 2022, correct?
Yep.
We can pre-order it on Amazon. Yep. I think I saw that as well.
Thank you very
Leader,
much.
get this book. Get this book and bundle it with Passionate Performance. And I will tell you, you will not regret that because it is absolutely great. What prompted Healthy Leadership, Lee?
Well, this is part of this new kind of positioning of our business a couple of years ago to think about, like, what do we want to be for the next 10 years? Like, what do we want our legacy to be? And Julie and I spent a lot of time, iterative process, thinking. And it was really about, we wanted to be leadership advisors for healthy growth. That's healthy growth for the leader, healthy growth for the employees, and healthy growth for the business.
Love it.
So it's a win all the way around, right? Yeah. And we have this whole model for healthy growth, but around that model, the perimeter around it is, the ring is healthy leadership, because we believe that healthy leadership is a force multiplier. We have these 5 growth factors in this model, but those growth factors are either inhibited or enhanced by the leader. Yeah. So we just said, we have this model, but it's really the ring around it. That's the trick here. That's the secret sauce. So we started developing this model around healthy leadership. What does it look like in today's world? How does it address current needs? And then so we started to build that out more. So we have assessments on it and tools and everything around that that have enabled people, again, hopefully enable leaders to relook at the way they view their role and relook at their people. But as a result, then it's transforming their business. So.
Yeah, you can't give what you don't have. So go get this stuff. It is amazing. Who outside of your content, how have you been influenced most? Is there a book that you read that was like, this is a milestone book for me? Is there a mentor that you've had that had, what was that for you?
I'll answer to my mentor is a fellow co-author and best-selling author, and also the CEO of a publishing firm that we use called Cornerstone Leadership Institute. His name is David Cottrell. He has a great book called Monday Morning Leadership. He's been a great mentor of mine for years. But I'm going to give you a book that may not be the typical book. Maybe it'll help with a lot of your entrepreneurs. This is the book I did to kind of do a lot of this self-reflection, and it's called Even Eagles Need a Push. Years ago, it was written forever ago, and I reread it and I give it to people now. I'm thinking, how did this guy know it was going to be relevant like 30 years later? It's unbelievable. And a guy named David McNally wrote it, Even Eagles Need a Push. And it's really a workbook. You read a few pages and then you write some things and you reflect and you read more. So it's a layering process. Don't be type A and just finish it in an hour. Over a month, do it. But Even Eagles Need a Push really helped me get a sense of who I was as a person. How does that fit into what I want to be in the future? Really very powerful workbook that I use. So that's probably the most influential book in my life to this point.
Wow. Yeah. We will put that in the show notes. That will be one that I will order as well. Cool. That is amazing, amazing feedback. I'm always looking for that one more nugget that I can just take something from, right? Sure. And I know, go ahead, Lee.
No, I'm saying, even if we read a 300-page book, we're just looking for a nugget. We just want to elevate our game.
That's it.
Nugget.
At some point, like it feels like regurgitation. So I love asking those kind of questions. What do you do to keep sharpening your axe? How do you stay sharp after all these years?
Yeah, you know what? We try to learn as much as we can. I love being around young leaders. Right? That's important. We sponsor the Dallas chapter of the Young Presidents Organization, so we get to be around them. It's great. And I always just try to keep an open mind and just learn from people. So, I mean, your life is a learning lab. You got your books and your podcasts. Those are the obvious things. But really, it's about even the people you're interacting with. You're open-minded and thinking about, man, that guy at Ace Hardware, he really had a knack with people. Or look at how they marketed that. That was really interesting. That's different. We're always just looking at the world around us and trying to learn as much as we can. Some might not apply to our business or personally, but it's just always to have a curious mind is really critical. And I think curiosity, we talk about that in the new book, curiosity is really key. It's like, as a leader, you never want your people to think, oh, that guy's arrived, right? He's just kind of coasting, right? You always have to be curious, asking questions and being open to people's responses. But even just in terms of how you view the world, I just kind of view it with a curious mind. So that kind of helps me try to stay a little bit sharp. Not as sharp as I used to be, I can tell you that much. But
well, I think the curiosity thing is big. Curiosity is really big. And most people think about why something couldn't work or why it wouldn't happen. But John Maxwell says it all the time. One of the most powerful ways to build your knowledge and build your network is ask Lee after this call, who do you know that I don't know that I need to meet? And I'll tell you, here's how Lee got on the show. This is going to blow your minds. I had his book in front of me. I had just talked about it to a client of mine. And I'm looking at the bottom of that thing and it says Lee J. Colan. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to Google him. I'm going to see if he would even be interested in being on the show. I'm not kidding. It wasn't even an hour that went by and you're like, I'd love to. And I'm like, wow, how about that? And here we are. So somebody that has had the impact on me and just for the asking, here we are.
You know, if you never ask, the answer is always no, right?
Yeah.
So good for you for being bold. That's well done.
Be curious. That's how I got Michael Watkins on the show the first 90 days.
Really? Yeah, sure.
Big impactful book. I just messaged him on LinkedIn. I DM'd him and he was like, yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
So you just never know. But Lee, look, your work has made a huge impact on me and I know countless others. And now the listeners from all over the world to this show have now been introduced to your content. I know they're going to be better for it, but you have more than passionate performance. You're more than healthy leadership. How can people learn more about you and your work and what you're doing to help?
Yeah, you could just go to thelgroup.com, the word thelgroup.com, and check it out. So a lot of free resources out there. I'm not even trying to sell you anything. So there are manifestos and self-assessments and a lot of tools. You could sign up for our blog. It comes out twice a week. Again, it's really about how do we pour into people and put good out into the world. So it's not going to be lots of selling stuff. And if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm always happy to help people. And to me, that's why I feel like God put me here on earth. So if you have a question or you just want to bounce an idea off, however you want to access me, we're happy to just help out and spend some time with you.
Love it. Love the deposits you make, listeners. All of his links will be in the show notes. Make sure you're getting those. If you're not getting those, make sure you go to the website, jeffhancher.com. We can put those right into your inbox every single week. Lee, I appreciate you. Keep making big impact. You're making a difference out there. I appreciate you investing time to be on the show. Champion Forum Nation, tap into what Lee is doing. He has made a big difference in my life, in my leadership impact, even from a very young age. And I've adopted these principles and executed them throughout the years. So Lee, thanks again. Listener, thanks for joining us. And as you continue to help your teams and you help drive passionate performance in your organizations, never forget to take a moment and always remember that you all have been set up to be champions in this life.